You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
It's funny how the internet brings people together. Last night, I went to bed not knowing who Brooklyn Wilson was, but by the time I got to work this morning, Brooklyn Wilson was my new favorite person, thanks to the internet, thanks to a blog post that Hemant Mata wrote about her at pathos.com, where he blogs as The Friendly Atheist. Brooklyn is a student at Jenks High School in Jenks, Oklahoma. It's a public school, and that matters, and Brooklyn is a senior there. And the entire senior class was herded into an auditorium for a sex education program. And Brooklyn was appalled by what she heard, appalled by what she was told at that program. Things like boys are waffles, able to compartmentalize sex the way waffles can compartmentalize butter in one indentation and syrup in another. But girls are different. Girls are spaghetti. Sex gets all mixed up with everything else, like your feels and stuff. Brooklyn, angry and annoyed, and rightly so, took to Facebook. So today our school decided to have a sex ed class given to the entire senior class, Brooklyn wrote. As usual, this sex ed class was based around the idea of abstinence, both a clearly unrealistic and ineffective approach to teaching safe sex. I'm going to interrupt Brooklyn right here to say, you're absolutely right, Brooklyn. 95% of students, kids don't wait for marriage to become sexually active, and research over and over and over again, stacks and stacks of research has demonstrated that abstinence education not only doesn't work, kids don't wait, it backfires. Kids who've had only abstinence-only education are likelier to contract a sexually transmitted infection and likelier to have an unplanned pregnancy. Back to Brooklyn's post. However, on top of the usual disappointed, today a line was crossed. A direct quote from the presentation. Do you know why girls are so desperate and always text guys first? 2 words. Daddy left. I am disgusted. Me too, Brooklyn. That's Brooklyn, though. I am disgusted, Brooklyn writes. How dare our school allow a statement so demeaning to girls and so belittling of broken families to be presented to a class of such impressionable seniors. Daddy leaving is a life-changing and heartbreaking situation, but to stereotype and undermine girls by calling them desperate for having the confidence to text a guy first, so out of line. All caps. Right the fuck on, Brooklyn. You are my favorite person in the world today, and yesterday I didn't even know who you were. Brooklyn also posted a picture of one of the slides the so-called educator used during her presentation that said, boys are microwave ovens and girls are crock pots. Boys, microwave ovens, quick to heat up. Girls, crockpots, slow to heat up. Brooklyn captioned the picture, all caps, with, your body is not nor should be compared to a kitchen appliance. Right you are, Brooklyn. This educator, some right-wing Christian dingbat named Shelley Donahue, also trotted out the argument that girls who are sexually active before marriage can and should, quote-unquote, renew their virginities. Because if you don't arrive at marriage, in the marital bed, with your virginity intact or renewed somehow, you are lacking. You are not worthy. You are damaged in some way. Brooklyn's post got shared hundreds and then thousands of times on Facebook, and Brooklyn School announced they will no longer invite this so-called educator back to school to give programs. Check out this bullshit claim from the administrators at Jenks High School. The presenter gave assurances to our administrators that her presentation would be secular, not religious. Regrettably, she did not adhere to those standards. And yet it took Brooklyn pointing it out on Facebook and the post going viral for the administrators, who were presumably there for the presentation, to realize that the presentation was a problem. They should have known she wasn't adhering to those standards before Brooklyn got home to write that Facebook post, and she should have been yanked before the Facebook post went viral. Embarrassing. Jenks High School. But she's banned now. Hopefully they don't find somebody else just as bad or worse for next year. She's banned now, and Brooklyn deserves the credit. So credit to Brooklyn. We talked over the years about abstinence education, what a disaster it's been. We have spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 2 decades on this failing program. which really should be called the Dan Savage Full Employment Program, because the more poorly educated American young people are, the longer I'm going to be in business with my sex advice column and my goopy podcast. In 2016, Obama sought finally to end all federal funding for abstinence education, but Congress passed a continuing funding resolution at the end of 2016, maintaining funding at current levels into the new year. That would be this year, and allowing the Trump administration to make a decision about funding for abstinence education going forward. They're going to gut funding for Meals on Wheels, the National Institutes of Health. They're going to defund Planned Parenthood and PBS. No word yet on what's going to happen to abstinence-only funding under Trump. But with Mike Pence, who thinks we should spend HIV education dollars on ex-gay conversion therapy programs, including electroshock treatments, you can bet that those bigots are really likely to open that spigot all over again, which is what's so important and inspiring about what Brooklyn Wilson did. She spoke the fuck up. She shamed not the funders in Congress or state legislatures who are so hard to shame on these issues. She shamed the administrators at her school, and they have backed the fuck down. Good for you, Brooklyn. My new favorite person in the world as of today. Another one of my new favorite people, Minda Honey, advice columnist for Leo Weekly, who joins us on the podcast for Second Opinion, plus tons of your questions and lots of my answers, all coming up. Today's Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Me Undies, high quality, super comfortable, good looking undies. Get 20% off your first order when you go to meundies.com/savage. Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron delivers all fresh, high-quality ingredients and recipes you need to create delicious home-cooked meals. Get your first 3 meals for free by going to blueapron.com/savage. Support for Savage Love comes from Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, work with one that has your best interests in mind. Use Rocket Mortgage for a transparent, trustworthy home loan process that's completely online at quickenloans.com/savage.
Hey, Dan. Mid-30s, East Coast, I guess straight male calling in. I got a question about transsexuals. So I'm definitely into transsexuals and, like female, male to female. But it's really interesting, my attraction. Like, I like the fact that I know that there's a penis there, but I don't want anything to do with the penis. And as far as, like, positioning and stuff, like, I only want to be able to see the ass, like doggy style, reverse cowgirl. And I don't want to see the penis or interact with the penis whatsoever. But I like knowing that it's there. I don't know, like I would prefer a pre-op to a post-op, I think. And it's kind of odd. Like I don't really understand it. And I'm pretty open, like sexually. I'm not worried about being gay about it or anything like that. In essence, I identify as a straight male because, again, like with the transsexual, I would never want to interact with the genitals. So it's not so much. I'm not asking you this about with concern to my sexual orientation. It's just like I'm curious to know why it is that I like the fact that I know that the penis is there, but that I don't want anything to do with it, and that if I could do away with it, I wouldn't necessarily want to, but at the same time, I don't want to interact with it. It's so odd to me. Like, I don't really understand it. I just know I'm into it.
So basically, you feel about the penis on a trans woman the same way so many straight guys seem to feel about the clitoris on a cisgendered woman. Nice to know it's there. Don't want to look at it. Don't want to pay any attention to it. Couldn't really give a shit about it. But like to know it's there. I don't know what's up with you. That's very interesting. There are definitely trans women out there, and it sounds like you've encountered some who are willing to do what it is that you require, who prefer to do what it is that you require, to de-emphasize their penises, any attention paid to their penises, in the case of some trans women, not all, and I don't think the majority, but trans women, some of them who haven't had bottom surgery, often don't want a partner to interact with their, what still may read to them as male genitalia and induce gender dysphoria if somebody pays attention to it or appreciates them for it. Now, lots of other trans women who've kept their penises feel differently, and a lot of their partners feel very differently. But this is how you feel, and this is how you roll. And that makes you a very good partner for those trans women who haven't had bottom surgery and would rather not have their penis in play or regarded at all. What's going on with your brain when you would prefer to have a partner, a trans woman partner who has a penis that you don't see, but you want to know it's there, but you don't want to look at it? I don't know. It's very interesting, but I couldn't tell you. But there's something about it, clearly, that works for you, that turns you on. I don't know how many trans women you've been with, but maybe this is the slow tiptoe up to interacting with the penis. Maybe right now where you're at, to turn on to know the penis is there, but you don't want to see it or regard it or touch it or interact with it in any way. Who knows how you'll feel in a few more years about your trans female partner's genitals.
Hey, Dan, straight guy in a large city in the Northeast. I have a rather large cock, and it's not the biggest around. It's not absolutely enormous. I think women are being slightly generous when they say giant. That's fine. But I've been to enough sex parties. A whole lot of people comment on it. It's somewhat above average. Okay, there's other men around with cocks that are smaller. Some of them are bigger. Whatever. Totally fine. Strange thing is that I was at one of these parties and happened to have my clothes on, and the subject of my dick came up, and a woman said, hey, can I see it? And I said, okay. So I pulled it out. I showed it to her. At that moment, it happened to have been as small as it ever gets. And for me, that's pretty small. So she looked at it, glanced at it, kind of very quickly was like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, that's all I need. And looked a little surprisingly disappointed. And so the funny thing about it is that I think she just doesn't really know that the whole grower versus shower phenomenon. So there's like people that have really small dicks when they're soft, and they have really small dicks when they're hard. And there are people with giant dicks when they're soft that get really even bigger when they're hard. And then there's the both of the opposites. There's people who have really small dicks when they're soft, and they get pretty damn big. And then, which is me. And then there's people that, have really big dicks when they're soft, and they get like a tiny little bit bigger. Or all the variations. I guess, so she doesn't know it. There's a number of women that I've met that don't know that thing happens, and some people do. What I'm curious about is this common in, do people know this? Do gay men know this? I mean, they're talking about each other's dicks, texting each other all the time. What is this? Is this common knowledge? And why isn't it? What the hell? Okay, thanks.
It's midday. We're recording in the middle of the afternoon, and I have yet to receive a single text message from any of my gay friends talking about their dicks or showing me pictures of their dicks. So I'm a little disappointed if that's how it works. If all the other gay men in the world are constantly talking with each other and texting with each other about their dicks, I want to know, how come my gay friends are leaving me out of that conversation? Yeah, that doesn't actually happen. Gay men talk about all sorts of things. A lot of gay men I know personally, we text each other all day long about politics, not about our dicks, but sometimes about our dicks, just not always about our dicks. Gay men, sometimes we think about things other than dicks. Just wanted to get that on the record. Growers versus showers. Yeah, that is a thing, and it is generally common knowledge. You seem concerned that there's a woman out there, a woman running loose, who thinks that your penis isn't really all that big, not what it was cracked up to be, that didn't live up to the hype. And let's game this out. Why does this concern you so much? Well, you might get a reputation in your sex-positive circles for having an average dick. Because she, when she saw your dick, was surprisingly disappointed by it. But look on the bright side. If she's a blabbermouth, if she's out there right now texting with all of her friends, all of her straight friends, texting away about your dick, as straight people generally do, text all day long about dicks, if you should wind up at a sex party or in bed with one of these people who have heard about your dick and heard it isn't all that and not that impressive, instead of being surprisingly disappointed when they see your hard dick, they're going to be pleasantly surprised. It is better in many areas of our lives to exceed expectations than to fall short of them. So some people expecting you to not have as big a dick as you do, you can turn that to your benefit. Here at the Lovecast, we take you getting laid and we take getting you laid very seriously. And so you got to get some MeUndies. What is or are MeUndies? They're seriously soft, feel-good undies delivered right to your door. MeUndies are designed in LA and made from sustainably sourced micro-modal, the fabric 3 times softer than cotton. And MeUndies softer than soft luxe undies come in an ever-changing selection of classic colors, bold shapes, and adventurous patterns, so you can tailor your undies to your own personal style. And you can save money and time each month with a monthly subscription. Oh, brave new world that has monthly underpants subscriptions in it. And if you're not ready for a subscription, that's okay. You can still save. That's because MeUndies is offering you 20% off your first pair. Just use our special URL, meundies.com/savage, to get 20% off your first pair. So go ahead, revamp your underwear drawer. Once again, that's meundies.com/savage for 20% off your first pair. meundies.com/savage.
Hi, I am a 28-year-old straight woman, and I do this thing where I bike to work and then I change in our staff bathroom, which everybody has a key to. All the staff have a key to. And I forgot to lock it the other morning while I was changing, so the occupied switch wasn't flipped, and somebody opened the door while I was mostly naked, and it cracked the door. I didn't see them. I think they saw me, and I don't know who it was. I have a guess about who it was, based on the way that his behavior towards me has changed. And my question is, I don't want to raise it. I don't want to be like, hey, I think you saw me naked, and I want you to know that it's fine. It's a guy that I really like, super decent person. I don't want to raise it because I think that'll make it more awkward, but I'm worried about like just letting this relationship drift away. Is there a thing I can do to make this better? Or to like send him a signal like, hey, if it was you, it's okay. It was my accident for not locking the door, and I don't want there to be awkwardness between us. Or is it just a thing that I have to let go if I'm not willing to bring it up?
Sometimes I'm surprised by what people need my help with, because what you need to do here seems rather obvious. You go to him and say, was that you at the door the other day? And he's not going to know which door or which day you're talking about if he wasn't the person at the door the other day. If he was the person at the door the other day, he's probably going to be embarrassed and stammer a bit and apologize. And you just have to say, hey, it's totally okay. It was my bad for leaving the door open. I'm really sorry about that. Awkward. Let's put it behind us. And then it's behind you right now, because you haven't directly addressed this potential awkwardness for fear of creating more awkwardness. It's fucking awkward. That's why he's being weird around you and pulling away from you, perhaps. So just go and say, was that you at the door the other day? And if he says yes, and I think he's gonna, you say, oh, my bad, really sorry. I'm gonna be more careful about locking the door in the future. Now let's stuff this down the memory hole. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. I had Blue Apron for dinner last night. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. They are careful about the ingredients they source so you can feel good about using them. Terry and I are legitimately, straight up, big fans of the service. We eat better because of it, and I am learning to cook myself doing it. The meals are also incredibly delicious and stretches the boundaries of what we would normally cook, including now twice a week, vegetarian. Check out what's available for you this week: shiitake mushroom burgers with miso, mayonnaise, and roasted sweet potatoes, and Southern Italian cod stew with pizza bianca. Get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/savage. You will love how good it feels and tastes, and you will acquire skills preparing Blue Apron meals, following their instructions that then you can use when you're not cooking Blue Apron, when you're winging it on your own. But with Blue Apron, you will cook incredible home-cooked meals, the ones they prepare and send for you, and the ones that you then improvise on your own later, as I have now done with some of the skills I have acquired doing what Blue Apron tells me to do. That's blueapron.com/savage. Blue Apron, a better way to cook and to learn.
Hey, Dan. I have a question about adult stores, and namely how the fuck they're possibly still in business. And I wonder, is there something going on at adult stores that I'm not privy to? For example, like, are people not just buying sex toys and DVDs at them? Like, are people having sex at them or something? And I ask this just because in a world where Best Buys are closing, how the fuck could an adult store like possibly make it when you could just buy all of that stuff online? And I'm not talking about your local awesome sex shop. I'm talking about the dime a dozen adult mega stores that litter the interstate. So I wonder, like, is there something happening at those that I don't know about, that would keep people coming in the door, even though there's free porn everywhere and you can get sex toys on Amazon?
According to the best estimates, 13% of Americans don't use the internet at all, and an even larger chunk of Americans have intermittent or spotty or only occasional access to the internet. So your solution to everyone out there who needs porn or sex toys, that they should just order them online, isn't going to work for everybody. There are 325,817,751. I'm looking at a live feed of the American population, and it's growing. There's 325 million Americans. So 13 to 20-ish% of Americans who don't have access to the internet. That's tens of millions of people. There will be a significant chunk of those tens of millions of people who are interested in pornography, who want to own sex toys, who aren't going to order it on Amazon or rip it off on any of the dirty porn tubes out there. They are going to toddle on down to the sex superstore along the interstate and buy. Also, and I hope this isn't shattering news for anyone out there, sometimes people go to those dirty bookstores to look for people to have sex with. Sometimes closeted people like to go to those dirty bookstores along the interstate to have sex with priests in the dark rooms at the back. That some of them have, not all of them have, but many of them do. So they don't just serve the function of providing porn and sex toys. They sometimes serve the function of providing real life, in the moment, actual physical human contact for folks who have a hard time finding it any other way. Support for the Savage Lovecast comes from Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, it is important to work with someone you can trust and someone who has your best interests in mind. With Rocket Mortgage, you'll get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. Don't waste time searching through stacks of paperwork. With Rocket Mortgage, you can securely share your financial info to get a mortgage approval in minutes. You can even adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure you get the mortgage solution that's right for you. Whether you're looking to buy a home or refinance your existing mortgage, you can lift the burden of getting a home loan with Rocket Mortgage. Skip the bank, skip the waiting, and go completely online at quickenloans.com/savage. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Hey, Dan. I am 26, female, married in Colorado, and I am calling because I need some advice or some guidance. I'm 30 weeks pregnant, and my husband and I have been together for almost 10 years, and he just refuses to have sex with me. He keeps saying that he feels uncomfortable because the baby is moving and it just makes him feel kind of weird. And I keep explaining to him that she's in her own compartmentalized location, but he just refuses. And I'm kind of pissed off because I still have 2 more months to go and he hasn't put out. So I'm wondering, what can I do to make him feel more comfortable, or if his concerns are totally valid and I should respect them. I've asked him about other possibilities oral sex or whatever, but he still doesn't feel comfortable with even that, with me doing it to him or him doing it to me. And so I'm really kind of at a loss. I don't know if I should just deal with it and, not have sex, or what other areas I can explore. I really appreciate your advice.
I've discussed on this show before a journal that my mother kept while she was pregnant. She kept a journal while she was pregnant with each of her 4 children, and then when we were adults, she gave us those journals as a gift, so we would know what she was thinking about and feeling while she was carrying us. And I was delighted to have this and delighted to read it until I got to all of the different items, all of the different entries where she mentioned that while she was pregnant with me, my dad was having sex with her, that they were still having sex, and it was great sex and loving sex and fun sex. And I read that going, oh my God, I'm in there. Oh my God. Oh my God. You wonder why I turned out to be gay when I grew up? Maybe because I was floating in a puddle of my father's cum for 9 months. Maybe that's why I'm gay when I grew up. So I want to speak on behalf of neither you nor your husband, but that fetus, that little person who's inside you. Maybe they would prefer for your husband to stay the fuck out of there while they're in there. That said, who will speak for the feti? I will speak for the feti. That said, some women feel super sexy when they're pregnant and want to have sex. And I think you're one of those women. Some women don't. Some women don't feel sexy at all while they're pregnant. They feel uncomfortable. Their breasts are sore, and they just don't feel like having sex. They do not want to have sex. And I would never tell a woman who was pregnant, who was 6, 7, 8 months pregnant and not feeling sexy, that she had to have sex with her husband because he was attracted to her, because he was horny, and she should just go ahead and have sex with her husband anyway, even though she's totally not feeling it. Now, maybe she could come through with a hand job or a blow job or whatever, some masturbatory assistance, masturbatory aid, but I don't think she has to have sex with him. And I don't feel comfortable ordering your husband to have sex with you at this moment when you're pregnant and he's not feeling it. Maybe he's genuinely squicked out by the presence of this other person. To me, that seems legitimately potentially squicky. I don't think it would be potentially squicky for me if I was a heterosexual, but I could see why a straight guy might feel uncomfortable having penetrative vaginal intercourse with his wife at a moment when the baby's kicking or rolling around or in there. I could see why for some that would be a three's a crowd kind of squickathon. Perhaps your husband needs to interrogate that, as the college kids might say. Maybe he needs to unpack it with a therapist. Maybe with months or years of intense work with a therapist or a counselor, he can get past this, that he can come to a deeper and greater understanding of your body's reproductive potential and its beauty at that moment. But by the time he gets past it, you are not going to be pregnant anymore. So perhaps the work, while it could be done, it would be futile to attempt it. And so for the next 6 to 8 weeks, masturbate together, lay together, be intimate, hold each other. Maybe he can hold the vibrator. Maybe there's other ways he can help you, but there's something you don't want to hold on to. You don't want to hold on to resentment about this. You're at this impasse. There's a libido killing thing hanging over your sex life. You're frustrated. You're horny. Solo sex is also an option at a moment like this. And you have to, for the good of your relationship and for the good of your kid, you might have to give your husband a pass on this in the end. Once you've bounced back, once that kid is out of there, if you hold on to the anger about how he wasn't capable of being intimate with you at this time that you wanted to be intimate, it could poison your sex life going forward. And that would not be in your best interest, not in the best interest of your relationship, and not in the best interests of this kid that you are bringing into your family. And congratulations.
Hi, Dan. I'm calling on behalf of my friend who's a 23-year-old straight female living in New York City. I'm going to read it like it's coming from her. I've been seeing this 28-year-old guy I met on Tinder for the last couple of weeks. He's cute and sweet, and I like being around him, but I'm unclear as to how I truly feel about him. I've been taking things slow with him because I usually jump into my Tinder relationships quickly, and that hasn't really worked out in the past. This weekend, we were hooking up, and I went down on him in the dark. The next morning, I kind of went to do the same thing again and noticed a blister-like bubble on the tip of his penis, which I did not notice last night. He said it was a cyst that he's had since he was a child. Doctors have seen it, and they say it's benign and can be removed. He also said no other girls have pointed it out before, which makes no sense to me. I tried to hide it from him, but I was secretly freaking out on the inside. I'm not sure what to do, so I have a couple of questions for you. One, what's the deal with benign cysts on penis tips? Should I be worried this is an STD and would have any negative effects on me? 2, should I tell him I don't want to have sex with him after this, even if it is benign? I don't understand why he hasn't had it removed yet, but I would feel bad if he removed it from me and then things didn't work out. Or 3, am I being totally superficial about this and am I the problem and just need to get over it?
After a few minutes Googling, I am now an expert on penile cysts, which, according to this page, are uncommon lesions in general. They are asymptomatic and do not interfere with sexual function. Could indeed be a cyst. They can be removed. There can be surgical interventions to hack those cysts off. Removing them, though, can leave scarring, so some people prefer to roll with the cyst than to have the cyst carved off their dicks by a helpful doctor. She can ask him more questions. I think that's straight up legitimate. Ask him more questions about the cyst. If the next time she sees his penis, it's gone or it's a scab, then perhaps it was a lesion of some other sort, a more concerning sort. Perhaps it was herpes and he vamped and said it was a cyst. Only one way to find out, though. Look at that dick. Look at that dick again. But since they are benign and they do not interfere with sexual function, and any sort of surgical procedure or intervention risks some side effects, I don't think it's fair of your friend to insist that this man have the cyst benign as it may be, removed for aesthetic reasons. So love him, love his cyst.
Hi, Dan. I'm a mid-20s woman living in the Bay Area. One of my guy friends who I have previously hooked up with, we've discussed numbers, how many people we've slept with. And mine is really high because I was sexually active when I was young, like, beginning of high school. I always had a boyfriend, and then when I was in college, I was raped. And from that, I just started sleeping around, totally, just fucked a bunch of guys to kind of help me work through that. So he's a close friend, and he'll kind of make jokes of like, oh, like, you're so experienced and you're an expert, and and kind of all of these things, just like referring to how many people I've been with. And I guess a part of me wants to tell him, like, this only happened because of this pain I was in. And I also feel like it's really gendered because I don't think he would be saying this type of stuff to a guy friend who has fucked, like, I don't know, 60 or 70, women. So I guess my question is, like, what's the best way to shut this down? Do I be honest about what has happened in my past? And I'm not sure if that's the right path because it just feels too deep, and I don't really like to talk about it with people kind of beyond my therapist. Or do I just say, knock it the fuck off? Like, I don't like it when you refer to me like this? Or what's the best way to shut this down?
I think the best way to shut this down is to cut this asshole out of your life. You can tell him the reason why your particular number is so high in your particular case, but your number would be okay, and it would be your number, and nothing you should be slut-shamed about or constantly denigrated for, whether you had ever been sexually assaulted or not. A woman with a high number doesn't have to justify that by pointing to trauma, even if it had been a free choice, and not you acting out in the way that, with the help of your therapist, you now regard yourself as having been acting out at that time to process your trauma and pain and work through it. Even if you hadn't been acting out and you'd slept with this many guys, you should not be slut-shamed by this asshole for your number. And so you can tell him the truth if you think it'll help. But I wouldn't, if I were you. I wouldn't tell him this fact about myself that I didn't feel comfortable sharing with him. And you shared a fact about yourself, and he hasn't exactly respected or honored that confidence that you placed in him. He hasn't treated you well. Can he be trusted with this other information about you? Knowing what we know now about this friend of yours, knowing how rude and inconsiderate and shitty he's been to you about the number of guys you've slept with, can you say with some assurance, do you believe that if you confided in him about your sexual assault, about this rape, that he will handle that with more care and concern or compassion or emotional intelligence than he's handled your number? I'm not sure whether the answer to that is yes or no, but I would err on the side of not continuing to invest this asshole with my trust if I were you. So here's how I would shut it down. I would cut him out of my life. If you want to give him a second chance, I would say, you're doing this thing where you throw this number in my face, and it's inconsiderate, it's rude, it's misogynistic, it's sexist, and it's slut-shaming, and it stops or our friendship is over. And it stops now or our friendship is over. No more strikes. This is it. This is your warning, your one and only warning. Knock this shit the fuck off. Get angry at him. And you don't have to tell him why you are as angry as you might be, and you don't have to tell him about anything else. And it should be irrelevant. And it is irrelevant. So slap him down. If he doesn't take the hint, doesn't take the slap, show him the door.
Hi, Dan and Nancy and the Tech Savvy At-Risk Youth. I am a 24-year-old female from the Midwest, and I am calling with a question about a family member. So my parents got divorced about 3 or 4 years ago, and my dad started doing some online dating after that, and he started dating this woman pretty much right after my parents got divorced. He put his relationship on Facebook the day that their divorce was official, which was not the most tactful way to go about it. But anyway, so they have been dating for a couple of years now, and they are getting married in 2 months. And I just have a really hard time getting along with this person. I have a younger brother who still lives with my dad, and I don't know how to describe like how strange my dad's fiance is. She is very possessive, is like always has to like have a hand on my dad, is like always having to like hold his hand or have her hand on her arm or on his arm or like on his thigh, and it's really just like uncomfortable how often she has to be touching him. She really makes a point to like correct me on like if I make a joke that she doesn't like, she takes it really literally and she'll correct my joke, or she will like make sure that I know that she's more involved in my dad's life or my brother's life than I am by like pointing out things that I missed or that I don't know about. He also doesn't want my mother to be mentioned in her presence. Like to the point where my brother was going through a hard time and my mom was, you know, calling my dad just like, hey, let's talk about this thing that our child is going through. And my dad wouldn't call my mom back because it made his girlfriend so mad. And my parents get along pretty well for divorced people. And I get really frustrated. This person, my dad's fiance, doesn't even want me to mention my own mother in her presence. For a while, she was like tracking my dad's location on her cell phone all the time. I just think she's really strange, and I don't enjoy being around her at all. And so I get it. I'm an adult. It's not my relationship. My dad's an adult. He's divorced. He should get to date whoever he wants to date. But they're getting married, and I really don't like her, and I really don't like being around her. And my dad will ask me, like, is it okay with you that we're getting married? And I'm like, I don't know why you're asking me that question if you don't want the real answer. So I don't know. I guess my question is, like, is this something that I should talk with my dad very honestly about? Or should I just realize it's none of my fucking business and totally stay out of it? Because I don't want to be a menace to his relationship or, like, stand in the way of my dad being happy either. Although I don't know how this person makes him happy because I think she's really strange.
I have a theory about why your dad is asking you if it's okay for him to marry this woman.
Okay.
And that is he doesn't want to marry this woman.
See, that's my thought too.
And he needs an excuse not to marry this woman. He needs you and whoever else is willing to march in and stage an intervention to say that this insane behavior, requiring you to pretend that you're a first wife with whom you still have parenting duties to perform, doesn't exist, and isolating you increasingly from your family, from your children, and tracking your movements. This is controlling abusive behavior. Maybe she hasn't punched you, but there are ways that people can be abused and wind up, tiptoeing around an abuser and having their lives warped and destroyed without ever getting hit.
It was just so confusing, like when he proposed, because he did it and then told us afterward. And I was like, not really surprised, but my brother is going to college. He's in college, and she works at university. And one of the things she kept telling my dad was, if you and I got married, then your son could go to college at a discount.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like really like always trying to like convince him, And so I don't know if he's just kind of being a pushover or what.
Does your dad need the savings? Will it make a difference financially for your family in a big way if your son gets if your brother gets discounted tuition?
I mean, not like in a huge way. My mom has saved a lot of money for my brother. Mm-hmm. So like they'll be okay. I don't think that that's like the sole reason. I don't know if he just wants to. Well, and when my parents got divorced, my dad did some online dating and he dated some like younger, really attractive women. It just doesn't seem like she has a lot going for her. So that's why I get so confused.
Mm. If your dad was like, I'm getting married, and you guys, got a funny look on your face for a second, and dad blew up at you about how he needs you to be supportive and how dare you judge his love for this woman. But that's not what he's doing. You guys are getting funny looks on your faces, and your dad is going, is it okay if I marry this person? He's begging you, I think, potentially to say, no, it's not okay for you to marry this person because it's going to really harm your relationships with us. And that's her goal. And people who engage in controlling, abusive behaviors, as this woman is doing and has done, those controlling abusive behaviors tend to escalate once getting out of the relationship is more difficult than it was previously. Once you're married, once you have a kid together, once it's harder to extricate yourself, they typically turn up the temperature. So this is going to get worse. And you should say that to your dad.
Yeah, and it's hard because when he keeps asking me, is it okay with you? At one point, I looked at him and I was like, if it wasn't okay with me, what would change? Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, nothing. I'd still marry her. And so I'm like, okay, well.
Well, speak your piece. Even so, speak your piece. Go to him and say, okay, I don't think you should marry her. Dan Savage doesn't think you should marry her. These things are red fucking flags. If you decide to marry her, I will love and support you. I am not going to tiptoe around her. I'm not going to pretend my mother doesn't exist. Neither my brother's not going to pretend our mother doesn't exist. She's going to have to do some fucking growing up. And if it reaches a point where we can't see you with her there, then we will only see you without her there.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think my main concern is it's my dad's life. I really want him to have a relationship that he wants to have. And so I was like, am I being like bratty or selfish by saying like, well, I don't like your fiance? You know what I mean? I didn't want to be hindering his happiness, but I just think she's so strange and like controlling and insecure. She's very insecure.
There's a difference between I don't like your fiance because of their religion or their race, or they look at me funny, or I don't like the kind of food they eat, or I don't like how big they are or how kinky they are, or that they're polyamorous. Like, there are unfair reasons to be like, I don't like your fiance and I want to screw up this relationship for you. But your fiance has demonstrated that they are uncaring, a bit crazy, and controlling and potentially abusive. That is a completely legitimate reason to go in there and say, I don't think you should marry this person.
Yeah.
That's when you got to step up.
Yeah.
When it's difficult, when it's hard, friends and family, you got to step up at these times. And then he makes his own choices and you can love and support him. And, and when the wheels come off, you're going to have to look in a mirror and practice not making the I told you so face when your dad comes to you to complain about how he's being treated, or comes to you to say needs to find a good divorce lawyer.
I know.
Because you don't want to disincentivize him breaking with this woman eventually, whether he marries her or not. And if he doesn't want to give you the satisfaction of telling you that you were right, he might stay with her another 6 months or 4 years.
Well, they're getting married in 2 months, so it's coming up pretty rapidly.
And how long have they been going out?
About 2 years, and they got engaged right after Christmas or before Christmas, and they're getting married in May. So it's a pretty quick
but it's
turnaround.
It's not a rapid marriage necessarily. It's not like
no, they were dating since before my parents were like officially divorced. So yeah, it's
going to be awkward. It's going to be hard. Go tell your dad. Go answer that question. Somebody asks you for your opinion. You have a right to share it, whether they want to hear it or not. And sometimes the most important opinion to share with a loved one is the one that they don't want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Dan and the Tech Savvy at Risk Youth. Longtime listener and huge supporter of you sharing your advice and your opinion. I don't always agree, but I do value your thoughts. In a fantastic, loving, new-ish relationship, and I'm really trying to master deep throat oral sex for him. I really enjoy it. It really turns me on. But I have a hard time breathing, and he has a substantial cock, which is wonderful. But when it hits the back of my throat, I am feeling like I am suffocating, can't breathe, and then feel apprehensive about allowing him to really thrust into my mouth, which really turns him on, turns me on, which is awesome. Would love any advice or insight into how to really get past this challenge.
I'm sorry, but I only give deep throating tips to people who agree with me 100% of the time about everything. So you're on your own. No, I will make an exception just for you. Yeah, if you're going to deep throat somebody, there will be times you can't breathe. It's a little like swimming. There will be times you can't inhale, times you can't get air because your head is underwater. You just dived, or you're doing that part of the stroke where you're looking down into the pool. I'm not a swimmer. I don't know all the technical terms for this. And you just have to get used to that and breathe when you can, which is when the dick isn't down your throat and blocking your air. It helps, I think, if you're learning to deep throat, it helps with the panic of, oh, my air is cut off right now. If you are in control of the throating of the cock, not the person fucking your face, but you, that you, instead of laying back with your head tilted off the bed, allowing this person to fuck your throat, and that's a really good position to do it in, that you are sliding your mouth and your throat down on their dick and then lifting up, and it pops out of your throat, and you can take a little inhale, get a little air, and slide back down. It really does help control for that panic if you're in charge, if you're in control of when the dick is down your throat. So if you've been experimenting with deep throating where he is doing the fucking and he is holding your head and pushing his dick down your throat, don't do it that way. Don't do it that way. Have him lay back, straddle him, slide his dick into your mouth and down into your throat. Come up when you need to, breathe when you need to, go back down when you need to. You in charge, you in control at all times. And as with all blowjobs, deep throat or not, mix it up. There may be times when you're deep throating him, and then times when you are using your hands, times when you are licking the balls, times when you're taking a break, but keeping the dick engaged, keeping the dick active, keeping it all nice and wet and sloppy while giving yourself a break, giving yourself some time to get more oxygen to your brain. And I really do think you need to do that because I predict if you get more oxygen to your brain, you'll start agreeing with me more often. Typically how it works.
Hi, Dan. I'm calling with a comment for episode 543 to the woman who had an affair and her college-age daughter is really upset with her. So I used to be that daughter. My father had an affair with a woman after a 20-year marriage with my mom, and I was 19, and I was very, very upset with him. I never wanted to meet his mistress. I was terribly, terribly upset. But all I can say is give it time, because now, 8 years later, the mistress is my stepmother, and I love her very much. And she is perfect for my father. I can see now he was in a loveless, sexless marriage, and his new wife is so much better for him, and she is now a person to me and not an evil mistress.
This is about the guy in episode 543 who has a tight foreskin. I had this problem growing up and into my late teens, and he should absolutely talk to a doctor, but he can also stretch his foreskin gradually by practicing by himself, pulling it down over the head of his penis when he has an erection. He should do this even when he's got splitting going on. It puts tension on his foreskin, which is what's causing the splitting, but if he works on it long enough, it'll gradually stretch out and heal in a way that is more looser and comfortable for him over some months or a year. Weird analogy, but think ear gauges. Anyway, it worked for me. Good luck.
Hi, Dan. Just a comment on the scheduling of sex. My boyfriend and I find it pretty hot. We don't get to do it as much as we'd like. He travels a lot. I'm in grad school. But scheduling it makes it something to look forward to. It's super sexy to pick out something to wear and get ready and know that he's thinking about it all day long.
And we're going to leave it there. Quick reminder, we have a live taping of the Savage Lovecast coming up in Portland, Oregon on April 14th, our Easter spectacular at Revolution Hall. Go to portlandmercury.com/Easter for tickets and more information. We're going to have guest surprises, crucifixes. Rachel Lark is coming up to sing for us. It's going to be awesome. You're going to want to be there, and you're going to want to be there in person. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you want to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow my bitter, bitter rival, Minda Honey, on Twitter at Minda Honey. And be sure to read her column in the Leo Weekly. Get your ITMFA swag at itmfa.org. Support Planned Parenthood, the International Refugee Assistance Project, and the ACLU. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth and Nancy. We will all be back at you next week for an installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thanks for downloading.